Hello, and welcome to the hashtag Here to Hear Keeping It 100 podcast. My name is Damon Naylor, and I'll be serving as the host. I am the NAFCM media guru, and I'm joined by my co host, DG Mon, the president of NAFCM. What's going on, DG?
I'm just thrilled to be hanging with you, Damon. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I echo those sentiments. I'm just glad to be hanging out with my bud again. But as you know, we have two spectacular guests
Indeed.
tonight with us out of San Francisco, California. We got Malka Koppell, and who's the co-founder and owner of Civity, and Palma Strand, co-founder and researcher of Civity. And without further ado, we're going to bring in these great guests. Hello and welcome, Malka and Palmer. We have just formally introduced you guys, and at this time, if you have something personal you want to share with the audience, you can do so.
Sure. And it's so great to be here on this podcast. As DG said when we were starting, it was a long time coming. So really glad to be here. I'll say, well, my friends think I'm an optimist, but I just think I'm being realistic.
I will say that I am, although I'm a lawyer and a conflict person by training, and I'm when I'm listening to the name of NAFCM with the community mediation, I think I'm more of a community person than a mediation person.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good. Those are two great words to put together, right? And like Mark was saying, I always say you could say you're a realistic optimist or an optimistic realist. Either way, just
Yeah.
finding, making the combination, community mediation, hey, putting them all together. But we're so excited to have you guys with us. And we're just looking forward to diving into this conversation about building social trust, the power of connection. And what we want you guys to do in kicking us off, share with us the story behind why and how Civity was formed.
Sure, I can start. Palma and I have known each other for 20-ish years. We met when I was a program officer at the Hewlett Foundation, and Palma was doing work in her community in Arlington. And we started a conversation about how communities solve problems, what are the barriers to problem solving, and really focused in on kind of the role of relationships and trust in those kinds of processes and in those kinds of conversations. How people see each other or don't see each other, how they feel about each other, are both really important in any kind of process and any kind of problem solving process. So we started Civity about 12 years ago to focus on that relationship building and to support leaders, community leaders, into to be more intentional about building those relationships, particularly across social differences.
I'll just jump in. As I said at the beginning, I've sort of come from the community place. When my kids were younger, I got very involved in some local school issues here and started to realize that, I had this frame of like how things worked. It was kind of formal and, a lot about like processes. And I realized that it really was about relationships, that when people were in relationship, particularly with people who are different, and that could be race, geography, economics, language, immigration, whatever it was. When people were in relationship, it wasn't like all the issues or, disagreements disappeared, but people could kind of start working together. And when those relationships were not present, things just didn't happen. They just got stuck. And there was a lot of the research director of Civity. There was a lot of research about how communities really thrive when they have connections between different groups of people, that those might not be as important to us individually, those bridging relationships, but for the community as a whole, they are what makes it work. And so we started to think, well, we're both pretty practical people, and we started to think, okay, so we know that relationships in communities are really important, but we also know that people in communities are the ones who build those relationships. So how can we support that?
In your experience and your research, what do you find are some of the barriers and challenges to building those relationships?
Oh, well, I'll start. People have, preconceptions about people. That's one. People feel that kind of just kind of exhibiting regular curiosity about people feels risky. People feel that sharing something of who they are, which is kind of an invitation to somebody else, they feel that's risky. We live in a kind of a fear-based gotcha kind of culture. And so I think there's a lot of anxiety about taking what is a little bit of a risk, but not a huge risk, to reaching out.
In our workshops, we tell people about why this is important, why connecting is important. But the main thing we do is give people some practice in connection, because that's when they see that they can do it, when they really see the possibility. And when people connect with each other, they realize what a wonderful experience that is. And we all know how to do that in our personal lives, but helping people take it intentionally into the civic space is really what we're trying to focus on.
Yeah.
So, in looking at these connections, explain the importance of connecting with those who are different from us. I think it's easy sometimes to collaborate and connect and partner with those with whom we align as far as our vision and perspective. But what about those that we differ?
Yeah, I'll start. So I've been a community facilitator and conflict resolution practitioner for 30 years. And I have gotten very used to finding common ground, bringing people together based on what is the same about them. But it is the differences between people that keep us apart. And if you don't pay attention to those, focus on those, if you just flip over them, you're not going to be able to make real progress on even finding common ground, and certainly not on problem solving. So it's important to pay attention to what makes us different from each other. And there are many things that make us different from each other. We're all different in so many ways, and those differences are important to us.
Yeah, and I would just add that, we tend to focus on differences as negatives, but differences are where creativity happens. Differences are where like fusion cuisines happen, and where like jazz happens, and where all kinds of creative things that haven't ever been created before happen, when people who are different approach each other and sort of see the possibilities of what they can kind of play with, in a sense, with each other. And so I think that difference can lead to conflict, and difference is also kind of what generates creativity. And the question is sort of, how can we get to that place of really tapping into the strength of difference, rather than sort of always looking at difference as a negative.
And I think when we bring in the differences, it makes things interesting, right? Because if
Right.
everybody's aligned with the same vision, speaking the same language, have the same perspective, then hey, there's no diversity. But when the diversity comes, it just broadens everything, expands everything. And I think, like I said, it makes it more interesting. Okay. Did you have any questions you would like to share with?
Can you provide examples of where that diversity actually strengthened? Palma, you were talking about seeing different, not as bad, but as good, the fusion of food and culture. Can you give an example of when you've experienced that and how your work has helped facilitate that?
Yeah, so I think any kind of community situation, I'm not even going to call a problem, but a community situation where people have different views. There's one group of people living in one neighborhood who have this experience, and there's people who live in a different neighborhood who have a different experience. And if they come together then and say, wow, we need to deal with whatever it is, and they kind of are able to hammer out or develop a situation that kind of deals with both sets of experiences, that's a stronger and going to meet the needs of everybody in a much more holistic way than if, this group is like, no, this is our experience and we're going to develop something that just deals with us, or vice versa. And so I think that, the more perspectives you have, you're like, oh, I never really thought about that. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we change it a little bit? And that really opens things up to create ways of moving forward that meet kind of more of the community's needs and then have more buy-in.
Malka, can you put some color and some flesh to what Palma just shared?
Well, I was actually going to say kind of the flip side of difference, which is the different, if I may, talk about how difference can keep us apart and hurt our society. So one example I would give is pretty prevalent and kind of in our minds at the moment, which is what's going on with ICE and how immigrant communities are viewed. And that difference, I would say, immigration status is a difference that is keeping people apart. So that helping people in our country connect with people who come from a different place, who come from a different culture, who have a different set of practices, offerings. That is what we're talking about as well, is helping people see people that they don't often see, that they don't often know. And the wonderful thing about connection, and we talk a lot about kind of connecting through conversation, that it's not hard to know somebody, but you have to do it. And if you know somebody, even just a little bit, and share a little bit of yourself with another person, that can change your view of that person, your view of who that person represents, and vice versa. I'll give an example. We were part of the Stanford Strengthening Democracy Challenge, which is a study that was done a few years ago headed up by Stanford University and the coalition of other universities as well, looking at interventions to reduce, in this case, political polarization, so red, blue. They asked for interventions that would move the needle on a number of factors related to polarization. They got 252 entries, and they chose 25 to study. And our intervention, which is one of the 25, focused not on politics, but on helping people tell who they were. So, helping people show their own differences to others. So our intervention was people speaking directly into a camera about who they are, what they care about, how they intersect with their community. And the 30,000 plus study participants who viewed those videos felt differently about the other political party after viewing that video, even though politics was not really discussed. And the reason is because people were getting to know somebody that they didn't know. And they were kind of practicing, kind of getting out of their fear that Palma was talking about earlier, kind of getting over that fear and going into a little bit of the unknown and saying, okay, wow, I think I know a little bit more about you. I think I understand a little bit more. It's amazing how something that short can change people's view. But that's really sometimes all that it takes.
Thanks for that example. Really powerful, really powerful. So what are some ways we can incorporate connection and trust building in our work? If you can provide like some specific strategies or tips that people can utilize to build that trust.
Well, we focus on conversation, and one of the things that is kind of we sometimes call what we do the conversation before the conversation. So if you're thinking about like mediators or some kind of issue conflict resolution, that having a conversation that's about relationship building before you get into the nitty-gritty of whatever it is. It's just the basis for really moving forward in a constructive way. It's like if I'm in that conflict, I have to think that you kind of see me and think that I am, I'm important or I matter, and I have to kind of see you, and we have to kind of think that the other one feels that way, because if not, then I can't take the risk of, moving a little bit or being a little flexible or being a little vulnerable. And so that conversation before the conversation doesn't, as Malka said, does not take a huge amount of time. Can that relationship can be built. We do it in our workshops, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Just be here as people together and have that conversation and build that relationship, and then move into the conversation. So that's something that's very doable. It just takes a little bit of intention and a little bit of time.
Yeah, our work is in the intersection, lies in the intersection between, kind of psychology and sociology. So psychology is, what happens between two people, what I think, what you think, that conversation, that connection that Palma was talking about. The sociological aspect is an understanding that we all are part of a system, that we all as individuals are already connected to many other people, and that what we do, even one at a time, can ripple out. It ripples out to the people that we intersect with, and then it ripples out to the people that they intersect with, and so on. So that the power of an individual is actually because we're already stuck together in so many ways, the power of an individual is great. And that's what we try to show people. I mean, we created the culture that we have. We can recreate it. In fact, we're the only ones who can change it.
Yeah, we are the system. We are the community. We are the culture. So it's our work.
So I'm assuming you find that when people are more personal, more open, as you said, having that conversation before the conversation, you would think that removes some barriers and some apprehension from going into the deeper conversation, and it preps everything. Would you say that you see that in your work?
Exactly. People need to, even before they sit down at the table together, they have to want the other person to be at the table. They have to see them as a fellow human being in their community. That's the conversation that we're focusing on, getting that to happen.
And that's particularly true when we have these differences. When I'm seeing somebody as, they're part of that other group that is different from me. That when you build that relationship, all of a sudden, well, yes, they are different. And there's also a lot of commonality. People, we say, tell a story to somebody, share a story with somebody about the difference between you. And people come back and they're like, well, what we discovered was that we're very different, but we have a lot of similarity too. It's like, that story really resonated with me. We're different and we're the same.
So during your trainings, do you give them a prompt or something to cause them to share something personal about themselves with each? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We ask a why question. Often we ask, why do you do what you do? Or when people put a difference on the table, we invite them to tell a personal story about that difference. And that gets to that our conversations are about stories rather than about issues. They're heart conversations rather than head conversations. And that opens the door for people to connect, and for people to connect honestly with those differences. Like, yes, we're different and
different. We have differences, but we're still human, and we can work together. Find a way to put the differences aside, but at the same time carry them where they're valued and they're, helpful. But yes. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, the danger is when we see someone else, it's only one thing, right? And so we're all complicated people. We're all complicated people. We're just trying to help people see that everyone else is as complicated as they are.
Right. Yes. That is great. DG, did you have anything else?
I think then, how do you sit in circles where people embrace the concept of polarization? You're either one pole or the other. At NAFCM, we don't use that term for exactly what you said. It really depends what the question is. It depends what the issue is. It depends what the concern is, where I'm going to be. Yet we have this story, this communication story that it's a pole that people are on. How do you sit with that with your work?
In our work, we're not asking people to discuss issues, policy, even views. We're asking people to talk about who they are and to listen to the other people talk about who they are. And people really want to do that. They really do. People are hungry to be heard, and they're happy to hear someone else.
Yeah.
They're happy to. And we work a lot in one-on-one conversations where it's just you and just that other person. And you can do that in a group of 20, 100, 500. Turn to another person. But that's where the magic happens. And it's just you and that other person.
Because we focus on stories, we really focus on people's experiences. And, experiences are not polarized that way. People, where experiences lead people in terms of like opinions or viewpoints or stances, that can be polarized. But if you go kind of below the surface of those stances, then yes, there are absolutely differences. But those different experiences often have, they often have a sort of a human resonance that even when they're different, they are somehow also, there's a shared humanity there. And we're getting to that shared humanity and that complexity that Malka's talking about. Like
When we take the
people,
time to
yeah,
go below that difference,
yeah, yeah,
we realize there really aren't poles. There are people with
exactly.
different experiences, different expressions, different conclusions. That doesn't make anyone right or wrong. It makes them them. So
And
thank you.
it's not about agreement. It's
No,
about understanding and listening. And listening is so important. We focus a lot on, speech and talking. Listening is huge. You and your members know that. Listening is like so important.
thank you.
Well, Malka and Palma, you guys have been great. We appreciate you for coming on. And as we always say, keeping it 100.
We appreciate you. Keep up the great
Thank
work.
you. Thanks, Damon. Thanks, DG. So great to talk.